everyone, Jay here, and it's that time again. Welcome back to OverMangaCast. That time we woke up in a podcast and had to explain manga. Our heated adventures over-analyzing manga we find interesting. This episode, we discuss chapters 1 to 24 of the cult classic, needing little introduction, Hellsing by Kouta Hirano. And without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Can't keep Master Alucard waiting.
Hello everyone, I'm Sam, and I'll start off with my experience with Hellsing. I stumbled across the original anime quite by accident while just surfing YouTube for random episodes of anime back when that was the premier way to watch pirated shows. Show X, episode Y, part 1 of 4. And
the good old days.
And then you couldn't find part 3, and then I guess you're not watching this anime anymore.
Yeah. I watched all of the original Hellsing that way. Kind of forgot about it for a few years. And then Ultimate started coming out. And I followed Hellsing Ultimate pretty closely. Watched that, enjoyed it greatly. And then Hellsing Ultimate Abridged happened, and I quote it basically every day. But this is my first experience reading the actual manga.
I'll go next. Jacob here. I know Hellsing a lot better than I thought I did. I thought I had all but no knowledge base. Then I read the manga and realized that Hellsing Ultimate Abridged is literally just like 3% more memes and literally shorter and otherwise exactly Hellsing, which is sort of interesting. But the abridged series is, I love the abridged series. The abridged series is all I had experienced of Hellsing up until this point.
Matt here. I actually read all of Hellsing originally in high school. It's probably the third or fourth series I've completed in when I was buying manga real religiously. I love Hellsing. It's just so good, and it was great rereading it because you forget just how quick and snappy it is. And it's really not a lot of work to read. And I was happy we could do this little joint back into it.
Jay here. So my introduction to Hellsing came at a time where, similar to Matt, I was reading a lot of manga, buying a lot of manga, very anime obsessed. And for those who to get to know me a little bit more, I'm a little vampire obsessed. So this checked all the boxes. And that's kind of how I fell into the Hellsing fandom. I read a bit of the manga. I don't believe I got too far in the manga, but I watched the original anime and Hellsing Ultimate. It's been a number of years. Can't recall if I consciously watched Hellsing Abridged, but probably snuck in there. I've heard a lot of the memes. So
It's really funny.
So yeah, that's my exposure to Hellsing.
I think this might be one of the first series we've done where we all have basically the same background in the franchise that we're discussing. Which, I mean, it kind of goes to show just how wildly popular Hellsing was back in the day.
Yeah, I'm sort of the odd one out in that, where I really only know it from the abridged series. Again, I only know it from the abridged series, but the thing that shocked me is in all seriousness, there are 3 differences in all of Hellsing Ultimate relative to the manga. One is, I made the joke about 3% less memes. They literally do internet memes in Hellsing Ultimate, whereas they basically do something that's more fitting for a manga in Hellsing, but it has the exact same sense of humor, right down to calling one of the characters Police Girl. When I read that, my jaw dropped.
Jake did not know that Police Girl was Police Girl.
I didn't know that was actually a thing. I thought they called her Seras. I thought they used her name, but they actually just call her Police Girl. And then the only other 2 things that are noticeably different, the 2 female characters, not to say it's disrespectful, everything about the abridged series is disrespectful that's sort of the joke. They do bad things to the characters of Seras and Integra, but they take Seras and Integra's character arcs more seriously in the manga. Those two character arcs being taken more seriously are the only major differences. You can make an argument that Alucard is a little bit different in the abridged series, where he talks a little bit more, but it's really just the same character talking more.
Mm-hmm. We get our first introduction to that character, our eponymous Dracula. Oh, wait, is that a spoiler? I don't think it is. It's literally just his damn name backwards.
Hold on. If you don't understand Alucard is Dracula backwards, you gotta watch the Batman versus Dracula movie, because Batman,
I saw that. Oh my god, that's so good.
World's greatest detective, runs into a man named Alucard at a party, goes, wait a second, knocks over a tray of hors d'oeuvres from a butler, writes in lady's lipstick Alucard on the thing, and puts it in front of the mirror, like, in this party, to see Alucard backwards is Dracula.
It's kind of hilarious in a mundane sort of way.
And yes, it is, Hair Major. He's going on a lovely moonlit walk on the first mission, where we get our introduction to the titular Hellsing organization, England's premier vampire fighters.
They imply Hellsing fights all things that go bump in the night, but whether or not things other than vampires existing doesn't seem to, it's a gray area.
Yeah, it doesn't really come up until later when we get werewolves.
Yeah, we know that werewolves exist as of where we stopped reading, because the first two werewolves have been introduced. The idea behind it is that if it's not a vampire, it's a minor enough threat that like the police can handle it, but vampires are so powerful that they in particular are the ones that are dealt with by the Hellsing organization. I also got to say, as much as I liked Hellsing, it has some places where it has some problems. For example, the exposition dump in the beginning is pretty interesting.
It's pretty exposition dumpy.
All this stuff is supposed to be secret, and Integra just like walks up to the camera and explains to the police officer on the other side of it. Like it's very overtly for the audience, which it's the case where it fits with the irreverent tone of the series, but it is kind of weird that she's just explaining this to some rando.
Yeah.
The other issue that I noticed, and it went away relatively quickly, but there are some places where the art in this book is not fantastic.
Well, what you're talking about, what they did to my poor girl Seras, where she looks like a how to draw manga panel.
Oh, poor Seras. I don't know if Kouta Hirano just doesn't like drawing multiple eyes, but he goes to some pretty great lengths to make sure that there is either just a side view of a character, so you only get one eye, their hair falling down to cover one of them, or just they're in shadows, so it's just...
And one eye glows.
Or they have crazy eyes that aren't the same size.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
There are issues like that one particular panel of Seras that's just like, that feels like something that was meant to be cleaned up and never got cleaned up. But like there are places where like Alucard's hair will go weird sometimes. Like the further in you get, the more often it's done very obviously, very intentionally, and it's extremely stylish and looks amazing. But early on, there were a lot of places where style was attempted and it didn't succeed.
Which we do see a bit of in this first mission, where a vampire priest has taken over the town of Cheddar and is eating all of the people.
And like anyone else who ever becomes a vampire, the very first thing you do is say, I am intrinsically better than humanity. Nothing can ever stop me. Proceed to be immediately stopped.
Yeah.
That happens with at least 3 different characters.
I mean, that can be applied to other tropes of society, particularly, lottery winners.
I won the vampire lottery.
Yeah, I mean, how many people in this series are like, I want to be a vampire? That's like the peak of everything. And then when it happens, you're just like, well, f- all of you guys. I'm number one. No one can defeat me. I'm immortal. I have eternal power. And then immediately defeated.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the first couple of vampires that are like do that and then get immediately defeated, they are patsies. They are actually being sent out with the intention of, hey, you're invincible now, go be an asshole. At which point they attract the attention of the Hellsing organization. One thing that is going to come up later that I think is super interesting and one of the best parts of this book, there's basically nobody in this book except for arguably one character who comes up later in Alucard. Everyone else is like, it doesn't matter the circumstances, they're in over their head. Alucard is basically the only character that we see from the start who actually has things under control. And the only reason he hasn't just taken over the world personally, you know, broken the control the Hellsing organization has over him and just done whatever he wanted is because he finds this more amusing than the alternative.
Yeah, we get some implications that the Hellsing organization did something to Dracula to turn him into Alucard. That's never really explained super well, especially in what we read. So it's kind of more just set dressing to explain why Alucard, who is at least 10 power levels above everyone else in this series,
does the bidding of this random human woman.
The way that Alucard talks and acts, it feels pretty obvious to me that like Hellsing sealed his power away and that's why he's, you know, the only time he's allowed to like unleash his full power and enjoy himself is at the behest of Hellsing. I feel like Alucard wouldn't have to work that hard to just completely break Hellsing's control over him and just do what he wants. It's not worth it to him to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't really come up.
If we wanted to get into the lore reasons of how Hellsing works, you could probably make a case that they probably did something to create a master-servant bond that you see with Seras when she becomes Alucard's vampire. She intrinsically follows him because that's just how vampires work. You could make that case, but also it's much more likely Alucard just finds it interesting and he admits that he was defeated. Because we get that flashback and...
Yeah, we get the flashback of Abraham Van Helsing defeating Dracula. And he's like, man, you actually did it. You crazy son of a bitch. Fine. I guess I'm sworn to your bloodline now. You people are cool.
I do very much interpret the idea that they did a master-servant bond, and Alucard is just so powerful. I mean, he could probably just straight up ignore that if he really wanted to, but he could also probably easily break it because Hellsing was able to defeat him out of respect and personal amusement.
Mm-hmm. He's a good sportsman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to really put into perspective the power scaling in this series, every fight we see Alucard do, he just throws his body at the problem until it goes away. Like, he gets killed repeatedly and does not care.
He just gets back up and shoots them again.
He's kind of the Saitama in a way, in that he's so hilariously powerful that no fight is an actual threat to him, except rather than just being disillusioned by this, he just has fun terrifying people by getting back up again.
Hold that thought for the Valentine brothers, because I had a rather hilarious epiphany relative to that, but that's a bit off yet, because we're still technically in Cheddar right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is your basic setup chapter, which is why we've been discussing more meta things instead of it. But Vampire Priest murders everybody. We learn how ghouls work. We get our first instance of, you know, the extreme levels of just violence and hideousness in this, because the Vampire Priest is just like, I don't know if you're a virgin or not, but I'm just going to make sure before I drink your blood. You know what I'm saying? And Alucard's like, man, you fucking suck, dude. And then shoots him through Seras and turns her into a vampire because he felt pity for her because she agreed to it. Because she agreed to it.
It's because she agreed to it, and he also references the fact that she was very pure and noble in her actions compared to so many other humans. He was impressed by how...
Yeah, he notes that she could have just escaped. She's literally just a police officer, and everyone else was dead, but she stayed in the town trying to get the situation under control. Like every other character, she's so hideously in over her head that it goes about as well as you'd expect.
But that's like the first time we see a thread of Alucard's character that we see throughout the entire series, in that he actually does have a lot of respect for humans when they live up to the standards of the people that beat him. I know, like, obviously Kouta Hirano drew a lot from Bram Stoker's OG Dracula. But if you've read that, then you know that so many of the human characters in that are like these paragons of humanity and goodness. And that's what lets them defeat Dracula. It kind of goes to reason that Alucard would have zero respect for anybody who didn't live up to that insane ideal. And then Seras did, so she was interesting enough to turn.
I think at one point someone actually, it might be Integra, I'm not sure, but someone says if you want to learn more about vampires, read Bram Stoker.
Yep.
I mean, she's not wrong.
Again, to the complete irreverence that this series has, and I love it so much.
And that's sort of like, that also goes with all of like the violence and the like the casual references of rape and things like that. It's almost weird to put it this way, but it doesn't come off as gratuitous because it doesn't care.
The universe of the manga itself could not give a shit.
The entire universe is very dark because we have people just viscerally murdered over like nothing.
Yeah. And all of them in these explosions of blood, like they have the highest blood pressure rating of all time.
And then always you have to have the person who just killed them doing some variety of weird JoJo's pose.
Yeah.
I think this is like one of the original JoJo's.
Well, no, this came out after JoJo's, but
Yeah.
Really? Was it like
yeah.
at least the same era? Or slightly before?
I think it's from like the same era as Stardust Crusaders.
I was going to say,
Okay.
Codified a lot of the JoJo memes that we think of.
Ah.
yeah, I thought this was 90s as well because JoJo's and Dragon Ball are contemporary, so I know JoJo's is like early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the very enthusiastic walk through Cheddar. The next segment is Integra's flashback.
There were no survivors. What about that girl you're holding? There were no survivors. God damn it.
Haha. Yeah, though she's officially declared as one of the missing. So, I mean,
And then we get convenient.
She conveniently happens to be an orphan. How about that?
She is the list of things you need to be in order for your disappearance as a vampire to cause no narrative threads that need to be solved.
Unmarried, no significant other, orphan, no extended family, nobody else in that entire situation survived. But then we have the next segment, Integra having a flashback to how she met Alucard. Like, that's a flashback to only like 10 years ago, which also hammers home another thing. Integra is like shockingly young. She's like 19 or 20, I think.
yeah, she's late teens definitely, because the story opens up obviously with her father dying and there being the whole inheritance dispute between her and her uncle, and
she's like a young teen girl in that.
no, I wouldn't even say she's a teen. Like, isn't she like 8 or 9?
No, she's not even a teen.
I was going to give like to easiest benefit for as old as Integra could possibly be. She looks like at max 13. And that's a stretch. Like, it's a young 13.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, like, I'd assume it was somewhere between 8 and 10.
I think she's supposed to be canonically 10 when that happens, but that
makes sense.
I might just be pulling that out of my hat.
Well, I mean, isn't that also part of the reason? Well, I mean, part of the reason, aside from the obvious, but the uncle is so insulted
That this 10-year-old girl is being given.
I did not go through all this trouble of reenacting the inciting incident of Hamlet to have this child take my inheritance.
This literal child.
Do they explicitly state in the manga that, because I know in Abridged, they say that it was the uncle specifically poisoning the dad, the previous head of Hellsing?
I think they imply he killed him. I think that's very clear because it's like her dad is dead for like 24 hours before he sends hit squads to murder the 10-year-old girl. I don't think he's a good guy.
Yeah, no, 24 hours is generous. I think it's more like 45 minutes.
I'm just saying, approaching this from a more strategic, if he had a good relationship with the daughter, he probably would have been a good surrogate or a retainer.
This guy doesn't seem to know anything about how the organization works because he didn't
I'm just saying, if his objective was to be controlling, he could do that behind the scenes if he had a relationship with the daughter.
That's true, but he's also not very smart. He didn't know Alucard even existed.
He didn't know an entire section of the building was still in use.
Yeah, he's a dum-dum.
Mm-hmm. Like most of the
I'm just saying, if I were a smart uncle.
Like most of the antagonists in this series, he's just a power-hungry nut, and he doesn't think beyond that.
Who shouts his plan at the camera.
Yes.
While JoJo's posing.
So Integra manages to escape into the basement because her father said, if you're ever in the most dire of straits, then go into the basement and find the sealed door there. What's in there will help you. Probably assuming that this wouldn't happen until like years later, not before his body is even cold.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So Integra goes into the basement and finds a gimped up corpse.
Yep.
Well, it's important to note the fact that she uses vents. She doesn't just go, through a door, because that comes up in later chapters of, remember those vents that led you to the basement? Well, because her uncle is like having his guys like patrol the halls and everything for her. So she has to go around.
Well, he has effective control over Hellsing, doesn't he? Like, those are Hellsing soldiers that he has told, hey, murder Integra.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, but...
As far as I recall, there was a faction within Hellsing that agreed with him.
Yeah, because he mentions offhandedly at one point, like, we only have so much time to kill her before the others notice what's going on.
So it's the case where because the people guarding the facility are not going to be read into everything, there's probably a group of people who are like, why is the 10-year-old getting to be in charge? Why isn't it this adult who presumably knows what he's doing, and just they knew as little as the uncle did? Mm-hmm. So they joined with the uncle.
But that goes about as well as can be expected, because the uncle, having reached full violent psychopath at this point, decides to not just cleanly shoot and kill Integra, but decides to make a game out of it and shoots her non-fatally, which is a very, very thin line. But this is Hellsing, so anything that's not a direct shot to the heart, neck, or head you're probably going to be okay.
Well, can we just point out that while he may be an idiot, her uncle is a crack shot because he shoots her ear off purposefully.
Yeah.
And that splatters enough blood around the corpse, and hey, it's the vampire, it's Alucard, who then proceeds to absolutely myrtleize the hell out of the traitor Hellsing guards.
But importantly, not the uncle.
Yeah, which is where we get, it's actually like a really defining character moment for Alucard and Integra's relationship, because Alucard is just using himself as a meat shield for her, and she takes this opportunity to level the gun she has the gun she took from one of the dead guards on Alucard's arm and pop her own uncle in the head.
And this is actually a really cool thing about particularly Integra's character. And there's an even better moment that's more illustrative of this. But one of the things that I really, really love about Integra's character is, especially if you look relative to Hellsing Ultimate Abridged, they put Integra in places where she's in a position of weakness a lot. And it makes her come off as a much, much stronger character. She's very rarely in control. She's usually in over her head, but she's able to handle herself. She accepts that, yeah, I'm in over my head, but I can figure this out. And it sort of made me think about, like, that whole air quotes strong female character thing where it's like they, strip away all the humanity and all the emotion, and the characters come off as incredibly patronizing. Integra comes off to me as just the absolute strongest willed character in the entire series. And I totally understand why Alucard respects her so much, because the story doesn't pretend she doesn't have emotions. It's front and center. And the fact that she's able to handle these ridiculous situations is what makes her strong. Mm-hmm. And you don't see that very often.
I had actually forgotten how much Integra just gets hammered by the incredibly situations, the awful hands that she is dealt in this. But we'll be getting to that in a bit, because first we have to go Bonnie and Clyde, and then we have to go over to Ireland.
Well, I mean, Bonnie and Clyde is Bonnie and Clyde. There's two vampire criminals. They do a crime spree. The only real thing of difference between this and Cheddar is that Seras was told, hey, use your big sniper rifle gun.
Police girl, take the shot.
Look through your third eye. Don't look as humans look. You're going to miss. Look like a vampire. Isn't the margin of error gonna mostly be with the gun? Shut up.
You're going to miss it. You're going to miss it.
But this is where we get introduced to my favorite character, Father Alexander Anderson.
Oh my God, Anderson.
That's the next mission, actually.
He's teased at the end of Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
Talking to some of the orphans at the Vatican and saying, "Nah, the only ones you should be getting rough with are heathens and demons."
That's a good, accurate interpretation of how hard it is to read this dialogue in the manga.
So ridiculous.
Any of you out there who have consumed Hellsing content but not read the manga, you do not understand how painfully Scottish Anderson is.
It's not even English. It's just word soup.
He is illegible in some panels.
Very insulting, Jacob.
I'm not wrong, though.
You have to read his words out loud because they're spelled phonetically.
They're spelled phonetically every time. Though I gotta say, my absolute favorite bit from the Bonnie and Clyde thing is at the end, or it might be the beginning of the Ireland thing, but it's when Anderson is being teased and they're going through like his bio, origin unknown, race unknown, and I just imagine that Power Rangers RPM moment. I'm Scottish. I don't think that's that big of a mystery, folks.
Yes, unknown.
Yeah, it's at this point that we go over to Ireland.
40 zombies in here. It's like House of the Dead, but 100 times more awesome. There's going to be a lot of abridged quotes, by the way, just so you know.
If you go into Hellsing entirely blind, you could be easily forgiven for thinking that there would be no third party in this. It would just be Hellsing versus Iscariot, because we get into a shocking amount of political minutia concerning the separation of Ireland and Northern Ireland over a vampire fight.
That sounds about right.
One of the things that I couldn't help but note, and I'm relatively certain this is on purpose, but the abridged series actually what sounds like genuine religious conflict where like they're actually like insulting things that either church does. But the politics in the manga, the religious stuff is just so empty. Like they're talking about like their churches, but it's just politics. There's no God in any of the things that they say. Yeah. It's just they're fighting over a political boundary in a very secular, real-world way.
Jacob, the separation of these two churches was politics. So, I mean, yes.
That's why I'm pretty sure it was intentional, but it is the case where, like, I don't know, it feels weird to me how it's, I guess, and again, irreverent tone, that I assume that it's on purpose.
Kind of, actually, because God as an entity is absent from most of Hellsing. Like, I think the closest we get is that the bullets Alucard uses are made of not only silver, they're made of silver from a cross that has been melted down and blessed. But that is the most attribution we get, other than vampires being weak to silver and holy water, which...
Silver, it's holy water means something and blessing things means something. It's just the case where like there's that bit in Hellsing Ultimate where it's, oh, the Pope's doing better than your failing church. Well, we can't all exploit illegals. Well, you don't waste time making money off of Rupert Murdoch. Like that sounds like the kind of argument that people from different churches would actually get into. Whereas it's so naked in its politics in the manga proper.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because in that bit we get Father Alexander, they talk about Protestants as if they're on the same level as threat of vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Protestants are vermin.
I'm sorry, you said a bunch of people have been killed? No, it's just been killing Protestants.
Yes.
We're fine. This isn't a problem we need to solve.
And the killing vampires.
Oh, just try and stop me.
And the Protestants.
The second verse, same as the first.
That's the level we're working with here. But the fight in Ireland is pretty intense because it I mean, it has Alucard being bored with the zombies, so he just has Seras go deal with it. He sends in
the intern.
Yeah,
Sends in an intern while he sits down on the steps with a Capri Sun.
Pretty much literally. Ghouls can wield guns in this, which, that's one of those ones where it's like, when you see it the first time when the zombies start shooting at Seras, that's pretty uncommon for zombies to be tool using.
Seras gets really into murdering the zombies, goes on a little blood rage and destroys them, and Alucard's like, yes, good, embrace the darkness, and then suddenly knives.
What's a blood rage?
Yeah.
Just so many knives.
Oh my god. Seras just gets knifed completely in one panel, falls over. Alucard gets knifed against a wall, and then Alexander does a 2 full page spread gloating JoJo's pose.
While quoting scripture.
Like Bible pages that are floating around everywhere when he makes his entrance initially. It's ridiculous.
He stabs Bible pages into the wall, and it creates some holy barricade that means the vampires can't leave the building. At the end, we're going to talk about our favorite fights. This is my favorite fight in the entire series for how completely ridiculous it is. I wrote our outline for this episode, and I have it as Anderson and Alucard compared dick sizes for a few pages, and then 2 super powerful, endlessly regenerating badasses splatter each other for a few more. That's just what this is. It's so dumb, and I love it.
It's great because it ends with Alucard getting decapitated, Seras grabbing his head and running away crying because she has no idea what's going on, and she hears Alucard's voice in her head going like, hey, you want to drink my blood? It'd make you a really cool vampire. Do it. I'm hearing his ghost. Do it. I'll call you by your name.
And of course she doesn't. Because that's another through line. But
again, one of the few things that is really different between the abridged series and the manga is it is a occasional mild joke. Like Alucard is incredibly disrespectful to Seras relative to her not becoming a full-fledged vampire. The entire manga takes the idea of Seras not wanting to lose her humanity.
Well, it's not just Alucard on that note. It's also Integra. They don't even acknowledge her. She is an it. I think he at least honors her by calling her female, a police girl. I mean, everyone else is just like, what is it doing? Or what is, I don't know.
Integra's very mad Alucard did this at all. This was not an order.
The other one who's sort of questionable in the way that Seras is treated is Walter is at once kind of respectful to Seras, but also a lot of people look at Seras like, why aren't you doing it? And then she has to explain the obvious of, I don't want to be an actual literal monster.
I mean, Walter mostly just has your sassy butler stereotype of oh yes, whatever you say, master.
Yeah, Walter is respectful because that is his job. He manages to slip so much
sass
sass into it. Yeah,
but anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves because I want to talk about my favorite part of the Alexander fight is Seras is running away, has decided she's not going to drink Alucard's blood. He stops talking to her out of a hissy fit or whatever, maybe he died. And Integra, in what must have been the quickest plane flight ever, heard that they were being attacked and flew over immediately to land and enter the building. Well, I don't understand the time frame here.
From London to Northern Ireland.
That's actually not that far.
I know it's not that far, but it's still for how quick this fight seemed to be going.
Because the thing is, she doesn't start going there until Anderson is already engaged Alucard. It's 45 seconds worth of fight if you time out the panels. And then how long has Seras been running around with Alucard's head?
Apparently enough time for the plane to land.
Yeah.
But anyway, we get a great scene of her running up to Integra, seeing she's here, going oh no, and gets stabbed by Father Alexander again because Seras can't have anything. And then he goes up to Integra and basically goes on this whole spiel about how you Protestants aren't worth anything. I'm going to kill you right here because you're just as bad as vampires. That never gets toned down. That is 100% the Catholic Church's opinion. And Integra just looks up at him, this man who is at least 2 feet taller than her.
Just killed her 2 bodyguards.
Yeah. She's again on her own with someone who could easily kill her, and just goes, wait, hold on. You just cut off his head? Oh no. And he goes like, what?
Oh, honey.
And then I think she also makes it like you really should have burned him at the stake and scattered his ashes to the 4 winds, because otherwise that's not enough. And he's just like, what? And then proceeds to get attacked by Alucard, who is now made out of blood visceral and bats, like he's coming out of a Nightmare Before Christmas fan fiction.
Not Nightmare Before Christmas. Not that gory.
Not that gory.
It is glorious.
Mhm.
Alucard just rises up, and Anderson's like, you know what, to hell if you have bloody heathens, and teleports out in the slickest way by opening a Bible and whisking away on glowing Bible pages into the wind. Everything about Anderson exudes the most ridiculous amount of style.
One thing that's worth noting about Anderson, we keep calling them knives. They're actually bayonets. Yeah. He's wielding bayonets in his hands and throwing them like they're throwing knives. It's ridiculous.
It's because compared to how massive and buff he is, they are knives.
They look like,
Yep.
There's a good author's note where he's just like, hey, where does he keep all of these knives? Better not to ask questions.
Hirano's author notes are something else.
Oh, like how he'll occasionally just at the bottom of a page go, please, for the love of God, I need an assistant. Send your resume. I can't keep doing this alone.
Help me. So that's the end of volume 1. And just with how into this we've gotten, if any of you out there are somehow miraculously blind to Hellsing, you now understand exactly how hype this series gets.
Because this is the warm-up. Nothing's happened yet.
We haven't gotten to the Valentine brothers yet.
Well, it's just kind of setting the groundwork for just understanding the dynamic between the Church of England and the Vatican, and the fact that there are 2, I want to say, supernatural entities on either side, Church of England and Vatican, that have this, I don't want to say strange rivalry and magnetism toward each other that just permeates throughout the entire series. It's kind of adorable, I think.
The reason Anderson can stand up to Alucard isn't just because he's huge and buff and has all these magic silver bayonets. He's got nanomachines, son, and regenerates endlessly.
Yep. And this is actually something important with that through line of Alucard's character. One of the things that's important is Alucard respects humans that are as determined and willful and strong as the people who beat him.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter the moral standing of that character. It's hard to say whether or not Anderson qualifies as good or evil because there's very little good in Hellsing.
I would argue Anderson is a good person. The main problem is that his belief system causes him to think Protestants aren't human beings.
He also doesn't rage. Like, he could easily, betray his allegiances to the Vatican and just kill all Protestants TCs.
All of that to say, Anderson's a very gray character, which is very much the intention with him. If they have the will and the strength to do what they want, it's the reason he respects Integra, and it's the reason he respects Anderson. Anderson is both powerful, willful, and willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish his goals. And that is why he respects Anderson so much.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we get a through line through Alucard, especially through all that we read, is that the one thing he always respects is human beings standing up to monsters, because monsters are insane, insurmountable threats. You need to keep fighting because he was the biggest, strongest monster who has ever existed, and he was defeated by a man.
That's what I'm saying. He's a good sportsman. He's a good sport.
He is.
He very much is. Alucard's another character where he's very intentionally gray, but you kind of have to like and respect him because he is willing to accept that I lost and appreciate that someone was able to beat me fair and square.
Do you feel like he harbors any serious resentment I mean, he gets annoyed, but I don't think he harbors any resentment.
He
per
harbors
se.
resentment, but not.
Certainly not at the Hellsing organization. He harbors resentment at people he doesn't respect. If you piss him off, he will never let it go.
And while we didn't get into it with this reading, he's got a lot of reason to be very angry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He is allowed to hold on to that anger. 100%.
That is beyond the scope of what we read. And getting back to that, we then come to another one of my favorite segments, just for how gloriously stupid and bloody it is. The Valentine's attack on Hellsing Manor.
Which,
Oh my god, yes.
can we just go into the fact that it starts with the fact that Seras and Alucard were such good vampires, they were each given new toys? For no reason, because the new toys are identical to their old toys from the point of view of the audience, but we're told they're better guns.
Wait, Seras did get a better. She get a better
Yeah,
weapon.
Seras goes from a sniper rifle to an anti-tank rifle.
Yeah.
Given how the mangaka draws guns, the difference between that sniper rifle and the anti-tank rifle is really just size.
Oh, yes, that is also true. Instead of having two white guns, Alucard has a black and a white gun now. That's the difference.
On top of a red coat, because he didn't look enough like Dante from Devil May Cry.
And the one thing I really liked was Seras's gun is called the Harkonnen.
Yes. I love the Harkonnen.
Which is really fun because that's a reference to the antagonist from Dune, Baron Harkonnen, which I only bring up because Seras at one point has a dream that she is talking to the spirit of her gun, who is just Baron Harkonnen from Dune. It's just like, do you have any wisdom to give to me? No. And then the dream ends, and that's it.
Poor Seras.
Gotta love it.
Poor Seras. Poor Seras. Alucard and Seras get their new weapons, their iconic guns, the Jackal and the Harkonnen. Integra is meeting with the 12, which is like British, the Illuminati for dealing with the supernatural. Yeah.
And while this is happening, there is another outbreak of the vampire epidemic. And I cannot stress this enough. It is almost word for word the same between the abridged series and the way that Luke and Jan Valentine are introduced. The way that they roll up with a bus and it's like, this is a school trip, and then a bunch of submachine guns pop out of the windows and they mow someone down. Like
From Texas. Oh man. So, like I said earlier, you'd be forgiven after the fight between Anderson and Alucard for thinking that this was just going to be Hellsing versus Iscariot. But this is the first instance of thinking that there is something more, that there is this third party, which gets alluded to by Integra as they go into the meeting with the 12, and is very concretely proven as a pair of vampires with a well-armed army of ghouls goes and kicks over Hellsing Manor. We have Jan, the incredibly violent psychopath, who is also stupid horny for some reason.
and incredibly vulgar. Yeah.
Incredibly vulgar as well.
And also have to question what their childhood was like, because I just can't see them being brothers. But apparently it was confirmed they were in fact brothers.
Yeah, because both of them, after this arc, appear at the end of every volume in a little side panel thing. But yeah, basically, the attack on Hellsing is a lot of panels of ghouls just mowing people down. Like, I think there's at least a solid chapter of just that.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally get any form of resistance is when they get close enough to the door the Council of 12 is behind, where Walter, the butler, up until this point, we are then revealed that not only is Walter a butler, but he also is a trained dealer of death.
Yeah.
Because back in World War II, him and Alucard fought the Nazis.
How do those garrote wires work?
I don't know. He's got garrote wires that he can just flick and cut people into ribbons from,
And
like,
they do things.
that garrote wires should not be able to do. No.
Yeah, they like change whether or not they cut through flesh like butter, and then are also capable of grappling things. It's weird.
It is so cool, but it makes no sense whatsoever. It's really, really cool, though.
But Walter and Seras have been called in to deal with the ghoul army, which they do rather handily. My favorite part being Jan being like, all right, cool, you got your garrote wires, whatever. Here's my ghouls with incredibly thick armor and giant riot shields. Try me now. And then just explosions as Seras is using her anti-tank rifle from down the hallway because bitches love cannons. As that entire mess is going down, Luke has tracked down Alucard's basement because Alucard's just chilling in the basement right now. Yep. He could not give less of a shit. I'm just gonna wait for their boss character to show up and fight me. And wait, he does. I don't know if this was just the translation that I had or if you guys had it too. Is Luke walking down the stairs and saying, "You can't hide from me, Dark Lord. I can feel your evil ki rising."
Yes, I had that too. I was going to note that it's like it was doing such a good job of sounding like it was in England. Not that it like has to disguise the fact that it's a manga and it's reading, you know, left to right and all that stuff. And then chi comes out of nowhere and I'm like, I'm not mad about this, but like, come on.
He kind of gave me the vibes that he probably had a hippie pilgrimage at one point. I'm not going to lie. Like, he's the type of brother who would do that.
Luke appears to me like the guy who spent like week one summer in Thailand and now won't stop about like how much of a spiritual experience it was.
Yeah. So like I caught on to that, but then I'm like looking at it and I'm like, yeah, he probably would have done that. He's that guy.
And Alucard just chilling like a baller in his throne with the wine glasses next to him and everything. Just sitting there like, even if I hide from you, who's hiding?
Oh my gosh. Their initial confrontation is the literal most overt, because it's like I've seen stuff tie for this overt, but it is the most overt gun as metaphor for penis and violence as metaphor for sex moment, because they shoot each other, at which point Jan falls on his back and the place where he puts his gun is just like...
It's completely egregious, going on about how he is the superior vampire, how he was like made to destroy something as powerful as Alucard. And Alucard's like, that's neat, kid. Release restraint level 1. And that's when we find out that Alucard's been holding back this entire time.
And that actually brings up an interesting thing, because the inevitable happens. Luke is annihilated. Like Alucard, you know, blasts his legs off with his new guns.
All the while, because like Luke was talking such hot trash, Alucard responds obviously with, come on, you were talking all that good a minute ago.
Grow back your legs, summon up your demons, hit me, fight me.
Give me a hug.
Remember I said before, hold on to that thought about comparing Alucard to Saitama? Uh-huh. The sort of hilarious idea that popped into my head is Alucard is evil Saitama. Like, we were saying that would be boring. Just making like Saitama with gag manga logic intact into an evil character is hideously boring. Alucard isn't a gag manga character, but he is otherwise literally just evil Saitama.
Evil, but I see what you're putting down here, and I just want to kind of say he's like really the tragic hero here, and it kind of is not as explicitly in your face, but I can see what you're saying, just in the fact that he really wants, you know, a worthy opponent. That's really what he's looking for. That they isn't just one shot.
One thing that, Matt, you mentioned about Saitama as a character that was, I think, a very good observation of him was that Saitama is at his most disappointed when he hits someone and they don't get back up. Mm-hmm. And we see that moment with Alucard where he's not taunting Luke saying, grow back your legs, summon up your demons. He's saying, oh, if you're really that good, then let's get serious.
Mm-hmm. Come on, let's do it. You're really blue balling me here, man.
I think he even says that, doesn't he? He says something close to that.
It's probably.
Yeah, Luke did get back up after he got shot. Now Alucard's like, oh, freaking finally. All right, let's go, man. Come on. And then, no.
He was only getting up to run away in terror.
Yeah, which really pissed him off, naturally.
Luke starts tapping out, just like, yeah, okay, no, dude, I thought I was strong. You're a freak. You're a monster. You're just Hellsing's
Which
dog.
Is very insulting, because he approaches Alucard initially like with some adoration, kind of just like, we idolize you so much. but we have advanced to surpass you, and I'm stronger than you, and I'm this and I'm that. And now he's just like, what?
And it's great because while Luke's running away, he calls back just like, yeah, you're just Hellsing's dog, which prompts Alucard to just go, oh, I'm a dog, eh? Well then, let's get real metaphorical here. As he shapeshifts into some kind of eldritch abomination of a dog that's also...
with his face inside its mouth.
That shoots a gun?
Isn't one of his familiars is legitimately playing off of that Bram Stoker, like, dog wolf familiar?
I'm pretty sure it's a literal hound of hell.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It just, the reference to, why don't you call out one of your familiars to repair, your injuries? Why don't you get back up? Kind of like, okay, so has Alucard, one of his familiars, obviously he's a canine type.
Yeah, and in Stoker, Dracula had power over wolves and could transform into a wolf. So
pretty awesome. If you haven't read it, anyone, read it. It's a good read.
So good.
Well, it's great because then we get the greatest one-liner ever was, oh, well, if I'm a dog from Hellsing, I guess that makes you dog.
Yes.
And then proceeds to eat him.
Yep. Oh, it's so good.
This is why we simp for Alucard. He is the man.
And we immediately go from Alucard just top of the world, annihilating this guy, to admittedly another really cool moment.
This is the arm bars everywhere moment.
Yeah, Jan has been captured by Walter and Seras, and they're interrogating him, and he is not caring. He manages to break free from Seras's hold and sends yet more ghouls after them. Where did he get these ghouls? Oh, right. No, the Hellsing soldiers.
And this is again the case where this is a really, really good series. The parody is amazing. I could make a joke about how if you've seen the abridged series, you've experienced Hellsing and you don't have to read the manga, but read the manga because they take this moment as seriously as it should be taken. As irreverent as the series is, this is not a gag manga. This is a drama, and they treat this moment with the respect that it deserves. And it is a really, really, like, it's actually like a genuinely horrifying moment. Like,
because Seras starts blood raging again and destroying the ghouls.
They're everyone's co-workers.
Jan runs to go destroy the 12, but they were waiting with their guns.
Yep.
And so they shoot him down. So Jan gets gunned down. He's not dead, but he's not doing anything at the moment either. And that's when Integra notices what Seras is doing and is just completely horror struck. She pulls Seras out of the moment. But this was the part where, like I mentioned earlier, how I had forgotten just how many times Integra has dealt the best of hands. She stops Seras from the blood rage, but the ghouls are still alive, even though they're so maimed at this point that they can't do anything. And Integra goes to order Walter to destroy them and put them out of their misery. And one of the other Council of 12 members is like, no, Integra, they were your men. You do it.
Which, partially a dick move on their part. But also, Integra is just a real bamf. And she's like, yeah, I know they're trying to, like, make me admit I'm weak.
But I'm not going to let them get away with that. I am going to take responsibility. I'm going to do this. And then we're going to beat the shit out of Jan until he tells us what we want to know.
And, like, this is such a good moment because it's so layered. Because on the one hand, yeah, that Council of 12 member is being a dick and trying to put Integra in a bad situation. But he's also not entirely wrong. It's the Hellsing organization. They fight vampires. This is something that, it's like, how do you deal with this kind of contingency? But, like, they should have been on the table. So it is kind of Integra's responsibility. One other thing that they make very, very, very clear is that a ghoul is no longer a person. The person that was the ghoul, you never go back. There is no going back. That person is dead. That soul is long gone. There is nothing left. It's just a shell. Doesn't want to see those people be killed either. Like, it's only after, like, she stops Seras from killing the ghouls who are not her coworkers anymore. They're already dead. This is the other, like, really big moment that shows how strong of a character Integra is, because level of empathy to want to preserve whatever she can, but then ultimately understanding that it has to be done, and it is also my responsibility. One of the alternatives you could do if you wanted to make, again, air quotes, strong female character, you could have her not care about all those people. Oh, well, acceptable losses, pop, pop, pop. But she doesn't do that, and she comes off as such a more relatable empathetic and stronger person for the way that the scene is framed. It is a brilliantly framed sequence.
No, it's great, and it's probably my. There's a lot of good Integra moments, but that's a really top tier moment of the series because she does it. She takes responsibility for her point of leadership. She is responsible for the situation. It came out of nowhere. It's not her fault, but that does not make her not responsible for it. It's just overall really great. And we also get the interrogation of Jan right now. Does that happen?
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. I heard George Lucas. Anyone else hear George Lucas?
Yeah, basically, Jan is being interrogated, and he's just like, look, they already know I lost. They've been monitoring us. I guess Luke's dead. So before they firebomb me, because apparently all these vampires that have been mass-produced have tiny microchips in them that explode their bodies into fire.
Yeah.
Actually, they're vampires. It probably is like there's a capsule of holy water that can be... There's something, probably.
Yeah. There is some vampire thing that lights vampires on fire because
We're essentially turned into vampires with a contingency.
Yeah, and basically he gets out right as he's saying, I'll give you one hint before I die. Flips off everyone. Millennium.
And then his entire body burns to ashes except for raised middle finger.
Yeah, in true fashion.
He died doing what he loved.
Well, one of the things he loved. He also apparently loved eating people.
Well, skull.
That is expanded upon in the anime a lot.
At least I'm gonna die with a raging boner.
Yeah.
That's a very accurate interpretation of his character, too.
Yeah, these
again, the abridged series didn't have to change much.
In case this isn't obvious, this is the mangaka's first non-hentai work.
Oh my god, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so yeah, he's really involved in the doujin front.
That's amazing. That explains Seras' outfit.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Oh, you mean the military fatigues made of spandex?
That are no way practical.
That perfectly contour her boobs, yeah.
Yeah, that like they're boob socks. Why?
Oh my god.
With pockets on the end, too.
Oh my god, that imagery.
But basically, we get a whole bunch of pages after this of Integra and Walter investigating Millennium. And we really just get it beaten into us that no one has any idea what this word could possibly mean.
Until I think it's Integra who just immediately says, by the way, I've known all along.
It was Nazis. And then everyone's just like, I mean, yeah, that's kind of their thing. It's not that weird of a connection. It's kind of weird that the internet was scrubbed of all references except for a Star Wars fan group. I love how Integra says this.
Yeah, she's the one who
is,
she like orders the investigation, and yet apparently she knew all along. Like that's very much the irreverent tone.
But it's amazing because she's just like, Millennium can only refer to Hitler's Nazi Germany. She says to the World War II veteran.
Yeah. Now we've established our nebulous third party. Nazis. With everyone at Hellsing dead, except for the vampires and the other two badasses.
And a few people who were on vacation.
Yeah, there were like 3 people on vacation.
A total of 9 people survived. Walter, Integra, and the 7 people who were on vacation at the time.
Yeah.
So folks, take your vacation seriously. It might save your life.
So now they have to rebuild their forces. And they hire a French mercenary group, the Wild Geese.
With their dashing commander, the gloriously French, Pip Bernadotte.
Oh, I love Pip. He's great.
What is that? You say you are vampires?
Like the German characters, too, all have phonetically transcribed accents as thickly as humanly possible.
He is insanely French.
This is the third one, yeah.
He's painfully French. It's great. We have the situation of the wild geese are like, vampires, what are you, crazy? And so Integra's like, police girl, show them. And Seras just casually uses her vampire powers to do the most minimal thing of flicking Pip on the forehead and sending him flying across the room.
And then, of course, a moment later, Alucard pops out of the wall. Hey, kids, want to see a dead body?
Also, I've always been able to just walk through walls. It's never come up until now.
And it won't come up again.
And it won't come up again.
I am Alucard. I have lots of powers. Don't ask about it.
Yes, that is Hellsing in a nutshell.
Yep.
But we don't get a lot of time to hang out with the wild geese before Integra receives a letter. Of course, it's the Iscariots again. Specifically, Father Enrico Maxwell, their commander. The smarmiest Italian motherfucker.
Yeah. So,
With regards to Maxwell, this is actually an important point because we've been getting shades of another major character, the Major. The comparison between 4 characters, I think, is something important relative to what I was saying about the way Alucard is and how strong of a character Integra is. You have Integra, who understands she's hideously out of her depth and has no chance of survival, let alone success, and yet keeps going anyway. Then you have the Major, who we were talking about how Gray Anderson is, but Alucard respects him because he's willing to fight monsters and willing to not, flinch in the face of them. The Major is that way too. He is as evil as it gets. There's no ambiguity there. But Alucard respects him as a person because he does not fear monsters. He stands to face them without a second thought.
He is the worthy opponent that we talked about earlier.
And therefore, Alucard respects him as well. Then you have Maxwell. And Maxwell is so fake. You can see it in the way that his face contorts. At a subconscious level, at least, he knows that he is hideously out of his depth, has no chance of survival, let alone success. But he pretends he's in control, and that's why Alucard doesn't even acknowledge his presence unless he does something to piss Alucard off.
So the thing about Father Maxwell is I think he walks a fine line of, is he pretending or does he just have insanely blind faith that he is ordained by God to hunt monsters? Because he goes far down that line. Yeah.
I think it varies depending on the because there are moments where reality comes crashing in and he realizes how out of control the situation is, but most of the time he's so
smarmy. We do have a few bonus chapters at the end of each volume where we see the shenanigans that Iscariot got up to before the story itself began. In what we see in Crossfire, it's not hard to believe why Maxwell is so ridiculously overconfident, because he can just throw Heinkel, Yumi, and Anderson at anything and the problem gets solved. So he's in a similar position to Integra, but he doesn't have his own strength of character.
I'd argue he's actually like the opposite situation of Integra, because he is in charge of an organization and the 3 like power hitters who do all his work for him at no point take him to task. He is removed from the actual conflict, whereas Integra is forcibly reminded every single time anything happens is this organization is but a weapon you are using. You are responsible for what happens. This has been your decision. You don't get to ignore that. You are a murderer.
Yeah, we're going to get real into that once we go down to Brazil.
It's not just that things show up and force Integra to see that. There's also another element of she does go to Northern Ireland herself. She's willing to take the steps herself. It's just fate has a way of, kicking her in the teeth as well.
Meanwhile, Maxwell just hangs out in Vatican City, receiving reports and giving orders. But Maxwell did show up here to this information exchange. Ostensibly, they're here to trade intel on this common enemy, and they just start taking pot shots at each other until eventually Integra insults Maxwell so severely that he decides to throw a hissy fit and bring out his older brother Anderson to come and threaten to beat them up. Except Anderson's absolutely fucking willing to throw down right the hell now. And Alucard is here too, so is he.
Yeah, he specifically goes on like, you Protestant sow, you think I would care if 2 million of your Protestant lives were washed into the sea? I'm here on direct orders from the Pope, and I would not be here for any other reason. So the second you do something I don't like, this meeting ends and I kill your little vampire toy I know you brought with you. Which, in all fairness, Hellsing is not in super good graces, because as far as like a partnership between the two of them, Iscariot has some ground to stand on, going like, wait, why do you have vampires?
True. Why are you working with this literal force of evil if you claim to be holy?
Not to mention the fact that Hellsing is in a position of weakness, as their staff is a mercenary group and the 2 vampires plus a butler, whereas Iscariot has an army.
Yeah, that's all Helsing's rocking right now.
When Maxwell tries to throw his weight around therein, that's when Alucard and Anderson see each other.
That magnetism, man.
Yeah, they see each other, immediately pop their murder boners, and get ready to fight until Seras diffuses the situation by playing tour guide to some old Japanese folk.
That was just beautiful, and I love the anime cutaway.
Yeah, I love how this was apparently Seras's plan to diffuse the situation if a fight broke out, was to lure these Japanese tourists through here, a point which Walter goes, good thinking, girl.
But isn't that hilarious that the mangaka picked up on that and included that yeah, it's Japanese toys, let's be honest.
A bunch of old Japanese, because they're in like a famous museum in England.
The Imperial War Museum, yeah. And like one of the old tourists even notes the fact that Alucard is pointing guns right now.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone has guns in England.
They're just meandering along. And Alucard and Anderson simultaneously go, yeah, this kind of ruined the mood.
Yep. Boner over.
Well, I'm soft now.
And like,
kill you next time, you Catholic sociopath. Whoops, tautology.
but they do literally say the mood has been killed. Like,
No, it's a sex metaphor in the manga.
it's very overt. Yeah, that's the thing that kept striking me, is that at no point is the abridged series actually different. It's literally just shorter with slightly more memes.
Yeah, how you actually make an abridged series.
Yep.
I mean, you kind of can't make an abridged series something that it's not, and the series is already made by an adult artist, so I mean, not too much leeway there.
But anyway, now with his big Catholic watchdog being put on the leash and walked away, Father Maxwell goes, well, fine, I guess I'll tell you everything we know. So it looks like Millennium was a secret group of Nazis that funneled a bunch of money over to South America, where they built a whole base and were planning to restart the war effort over there. Oh, you're asking how could possibly the Vatican know about that? Because we helped. Did you know that the Pope helped Nazis? We did, because it was so good. Whoa. He just goes off on like this, did you learn this in high school? Yes.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Herr Major and Herr Doctor are like in the same cafe listening in on this, like, woo, the plot thickens.
Ooh, they are talking about us. Ooh.
I love Herr Major. He's so campy.
He knew Alucard was gonna be here, and he showed up anyway. It's like, oh, their greatest enemy is only a table away from them. They would never know.
Herr Major is so campy. It's ridiculous.
He is campy enough in a series. He is a beautiful spot of levity in a series that would otherwise be vampires killing Nazis who are also vampires.
He eats the scenery like a ham sandwich every single time he shows up on panel. But this is how we find out that the Nazis are in Brazil. The vampire Nazis, yes.
Also the Nazis, but most importantly the vampire Nazis.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, reality, fiction reflects reality.
So Integra sends Alucard, Seras, and Pip on a search and destroy mission to go and find these assholes and show them what for, which is almost word for word what she says, except it's more eloquent.
And it's great because Seras hasn't drank blood yet. She needs to be packed in a coffin filled with soil from her birthplace in order to survive being shipped across the water.
Yeah, Alucard is so ridiculously powerful that the standard vampire weaknesses don't up.
But he hates the sun.
Yeah, he specifically says, I'm not weak to the sun. I just don't like it. I only wear the hat because the sun annoys me, not because it's a threat.
Mm-hmm. He talks about all these vampire problems like they are minor inconveniences to him, which they basically are. Meanwhile, poor Seras in the box, just, let me out, please.
It's not even like a speech balloon. It's just words exuding from the box. Let me out. I'm afraid of confined spaces.
Poor Seras.
What is Alucard's pseudonym when he goes over to Brazil? Because
JB Dinner or something? Denner?
Oh, JB Delinner, because it's the wrong.
Yeah.
Twice in this section, they translate an R into an L when it shouldn't be, because they don't go. The city in Brazil they go to is Rio de Janeiro.
At the Hotel Leo. I don't know how you mess up Rio de Janeiro that badly, but here we are.
It is L and R that are the same sound, but it's just...
Yeah.
It's a place name.
Yeah.
That's true, too.
Either way, Jesus wants a hug. They arrive at the Hotel Rio, and Alucard uses his amazing hypnotic vampire sex powers on the yaoi receptionist boy in order to get the penthouse.
Is this a problem?
It's just every time I forget that it's going to happen, and then I'm like, oh, it's the yaoi receptionist, man. Here we go again.
And then Pip's just like, oh, did you use some kind of freaky sex beam on him?
And then Alucard tries it on Pip, and it doesn't work, which is confirmation. Yes, it's a freaky sex beam.
And there's just a lovely line about Pip going like, I don't really know what to do in such an expensive hotel.
Freaking bougies.
Yeah, and then Alucard's just like, cheap hotels have their advantages as well. And Pip's just like, oh, yes, they do. And they're both just like, yeah.
That's when, we have the moment with Seras dreaming about the spirit of her gun, which is completely inconsequential. And she wakes up, but rather funny. And she wakes up to the penthouse is under attack by the military police. Oh my God!
They're there to look for information and are immediately attacked.
With the media saying that a pair of terrorists have taken over and slaughtered a whole bunch of employees. We don't even get
a young British woman and some Ozzy Osbourne-looking motherfucker.
We don't even get confirmation if any of the employees were actually killed or if that's just a lie that Millennium fed them. But I would not be surprised if they actually did kill off some people.
Yeah, Rio is long gone and we never get... Like, the only people we actually see die are the police.
Mm-hmm.
But we also don't see literally anyone else anywhere in the entire... And it's like, yeah, they cleared the motel or the hotel, obviously... But we also never see anyone anywhere else.
There's a weird time skip. Like, Alucard takes a nap in a chair and wakes up and everything's on fire. Which is weird because the wild geese, I assume, didn't all take a nap together. But who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't Pip the only one who was there? The rest of them were...
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
Pip was the only one who was there. The rest were getting into...
Meanwhile, Pip was in his hotel room, and he sees the report on the TV and spit takes his beer.
And then Pip's just like, well, looks like I'm going to have to be the only competent character in this arc.
Yeah, because as is revealed to us...
That's not an accurate assessment of what happens.
Alucard doesn't do anything other than get his fight boner on. He effectively fails his mission, except that he doesn't, because he just gets to decide that at the end.
They came there for Millennium, but Millennium came to them with Tulbakin Alhambra, otherwise known as the Dandy Man, who has convinced a bunch of the local officials that, hey, if you go f this guy up for me, I'll totally turn you into a vampire and you get to live forever.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
That's all I needed to hear.
The police kick in the door. Alucard murders the hell out of them. And notably, while a lot of people have died in this manga, this is the first time we see a Hellsing-aligned vampire murder living people. And Seras brings that up. She sees the corpses and freaks the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Alucard is pissed because the one remaining guy decided to take his own life instead of die to Alucard, which is... Alucard just considers that the most coward thing ever, and he is furious. He's like grabbing.
That look of disgust on his face when we're off panel while the guy's shooting himself in the head. We get two panels of him looking down at him like, what are you doing? And then just a look of utter revulsion of, why would you do that?
Yeah, that was palpable.
He's like grabbing Seras by the collar, shaking her and screaming.
Is this when he gets on his little hissy fit phone call with Integra?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how he gets over his issues with police officer who kills himself, and then Seras is freaking out, and he's like, I need someone who actually has a spine, and he calls Integra.
And he taunts Integra for a couple of panels, just like, hey, Master, what do you want me to do, Master? I'm your gun, Master. Where are you going to point me and shoot me, Master? And she goes, all right, stop around. I gave you your mission. Go kill them. And Alucard's like, gets me hard. Let's go. I had forgotten the actual line of that causes a stirring in my loins. We're going to have to like TVMA this episode.
Oh,
It
in case
is.
that wasn't obvious.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there's no way you can make this PG like 13.
Yeah.
Seriously, guys, there's no
So
way.
I know everyone who's been listening to this until now, this episode's been marked explicit.
Yeah.
If you wanted to watch something that wasn't explicit, you are now an hour in, maybe? Who knows?
And are both blind and deaf.
So forget you watched this and go listen to Yu-Gi-Oh! Again.
That's the point where Left Foot Trapped in Sensual Seduction starts playing, and Alucard just goes on a absolute rampage, murdering the police, going down the elevator. It's honestly like, for how brutally violent this manga has been this entire time, this is a part that like it really started to get to me. I'm just like, all right, you've proved your point.
Oh, where Alucard just keeps walking at them as they shoot his head like in half?
Uh-huh. And they're screaming and crying and freaking out. And then they're just stuck in the elevator with him.
Tripping over themselves, trying to run away.
Mm-hmm. He opens the door to the elevator with his guns.
Yeah. Open sesame.
The other thing that's sort of getting into like the kinds of people Alucard like does or doesn't respect, hypnotize one of the people to keep the door open for him as he walks menacingly at them. Like the other officers mow that guy down and kick him out of the elevator to try to close it in time.
Mm-hmm.
At which point Alucard's gotten close enough that he can hold the door open with his guns. And
then we get, I mean, if you haven't figured out who Alucard is at this point, we get the scene where he yeets a bunch of guys out a window and impales them on the flagpoles.
There's like 12 flagpoles too, so it's like
right in front of all of the news cameras, which are filming live.
yeah.
they're sort of clear, but they're also not super clear about whether or not people know supernatural things explicitly exist. It's like they're gonna know now.
Yeah, I think what you were saying earlier about how Integra just exposition dumps to a police officer, I don't think vampires are like a government secret in this universe, because nothing leads me to believe that.
But a bunch of people express shock that vampires exist, though.
Yeah, like the police officers that Integra exposition dumps at, and the wild geese. It might be a Dresden Files situation if people don't want to believe something so horrifying, so there's basically a mass psychosis of nobody wanting to acknowledge it.
That scene is just the preface for, hey, Dandy Man, let's have a cool one-on-one vampire fight.
Meanwhile, Pip has successfully disguised himself as one of the Brazilian police officers, walks into the command tent, pops all of them in the head, lays some C4, walks out, and not only does he, cool guys don't look at explosions, he's in the middle of lighting a cigarette as the bomb goes off.
Oh my god, Pip actually got his job done, as opposed to Alucard, who caused a bunch of violence and then accidentally got his job done.
Lucked into it, yeah. And man, the Dandy Man fight, because Dandy Man, unlike Luke, is like one of the first vampires that gives Alucard not exactly trouble, but
he can regenerate.
Yeah, he regenerates, and he's got those card clones, so Alucard can't just one-shot him.
Yeah,
like he has everybody else.
I wasn't 100% sure. Does he just have a vampire power to turn into playing cards?
I'm pretty sure
Magic vampires don't question it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's like 90% of the vampires in Hellsing. Just stop. If you have to ask, just you're getting too deep.
I just assumed he had a playing card thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably was a gambler. Like, it probably is an allusion to something.
Either way, the fight goes to the roof after causing extensive collateral damage, murdering the hell out of some poor bystanders, including...
Well, they shouldn't have been there.
Mhm.
That's my argument.
That's what happens when you film vampire news. You get shot. That's why people don't do it.
You get shot with explosive magic silver blessed bullets.
Yeah, that's why I'm not out there.
I think this is a good enough time for this question as any. Do you guys think Alucard using those super bullets is actually his way of handicapping himself? Because he does complain at one point in this scene that is like, I'm running out of ammo. We can't stay here forever. But it's like, couldn't you just punch them?
Yeah, I think in a way it's kind of merciful for him to use the bullets.
Well, the bullets instantly end a supernatural thing's life. So it's strictly speaking more humane, and
we do see what happens when Alucard just engages in hand-to-hand combat in this, because
it's not pleasant.
It's not pleasant, no.
Nope.
And I think it's the case where when he's not release restraint level somethinging and he's just being a dude with two guns, the guns are more efficient because like he can probably hit as hard as the bullets do, but the bullets also are a ranged weapon.
Well, it's not about hitting hard, it's how he hits.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were going to wish that you were just hit with a bullet. You're going to wish you were shot as opposed to when Alucard gets to you.
So yeah, I think to some extent he is actually handicapping himself, but also he's handicapping himself by just being in that form, and the guns are like a half step up of being empty-handed.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just my my translation, but there was also a little snippet of him authorizing a certain level of restraint. I don't know if that was already referenced, but yeah.
Release restraint level 1. That's what he says when he
starts using some of his actual powers instead of being...
Yeah.
That's actually quite funny because if we ever get to it, that is a very powerful reference to one of my favorite series, Trinity Blood. So, but yeah.
Nice. They take the fight to the roof, and in case you're wondering where Seras is, Alucard is like, all right, you're useless to me if you're going to keep whinging like this. Go commandeer a helicopter so we have a way out of here.
And then she starts exploding excuses like, how am I supposed to do it? And I'm like, I don't know. Figure it out, woman.
Yeah.
Which incidentally is also Alucard's response.
But as it turns out, she kind of just pawned that off onto Pip because she's waiting on the roof with the coffins and the Harkonnen, and she just starts
taking pot shots at Dandy Man.
I can only imagine Pip's response to that phone call was getting that phone call, checking to see it was Seras, putting his cigarette out, goes like, you want me to do what? You realize I just took out the entire enemy's like administrative structure. Oh, so I also need to do your errands for you. Fine.
I would not be surprised.
You don't understand.
Pip gets things done.
He does. It's
He's
great.
like the one competent. It's like Pip and Integra, and I'd say arguably Walter. It's just Walter's usually just at the estate.
No, Walter's the same level of he's only competent because his powers are bullshit. Like Alucard. Alucard's only competent because
his powers are bullshit. Yeah,
he's not even competent then because this fight, he almost like he gets to the end of killing this dude. It's like, oh, that's right. I needed some information from you. Well, let's have some cool makeout sessions, and I'll take it from you.
Hey, Dandy Man, you lost, and now I have to read your mind by drinking all of your blood.
Om nom nom. And drink all the blood he does, which allows Alucard to internalize his memories. Sure, okay. And knows all the deets about Millennium, including the fact that his favorite frenemy, the Major, is still kicking around.
Can we just talk about the panel where he absorbs Dandy Man's he absorbs more than his memory. He absorbs his body into him.
Yeah.
Like as he's eating him, he's like absorbing his body. And because of the Millennium tracking thing, the Dandy Man's explodes and he's on fire. And it's just this amazing full page spread of Alucard, and he's got like burning blood traveling in through his face. And like Dandy Man is disintegrating in flame while being consumed. It's just
It is
amazing.
amazing. And Alucard is laughing and clapping.
Yeah.
By this point in the manga, the art issues have gone from here and there to super rare. And by this point, it's basically all just style. If there's any kind of like off model of anything,
It's for a gag.
the thing, like, it's either for a gag or just for like this incredibly stylish shot. Because like, you know, we were making fun of the fact that there's never two eyes on anyone's face at a time, but the way that they use like the glowing of eyes. Here's the guy over here who like deeply and seriously analyzes Dragon Ball. This is, as much as you can also do that with Hellsing, Hellsing is the kind of series that wants you to just take in how cool it is and not think about it.
You're supposed to suspend reality and just kind of become fully immersed in the world and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, the plot is a vehicle for cool action scenes.
Mhm.
Exactly.
It's hard to pull off because you kind of have to care about the characters. You kind of have to care about Alucard. You kind of have to care about Seras.
How can you not care about Alucard? He's the best.
But that's the thing. That's where the quality is, because if it was just a bunch of really, really cool pictures, I'd have been bored of it like halfway through what we read. But it's so engrossing. And then there are just these moments where the art just takes, actually, now that I think about it, make another comparison to One Punch Man, because it's kind of the same case, except One Punch Man is more funny.
Well, it's a parody. It's a parody series of this, probably.
Well, here's where we're getting into the end of what we read for this particular segment.
We're not at the end yet.
Well, we're kind of, because this is like the last major fight. The rest of what we've read is, you know, kind of the build up to the next part. We have one glorious scene of Maxwell going full Inquisitor on one of the guys who helped Millennium escape 50 years ago.
One of the
Oh my
bishops.
Yeah, and that's like what brings back, like, Iscariot walks the fine line of being basically antagonist to Hellsing while also backing up. It's like, no, they're on the same side. They just hate each other.
The bishop goes into all these details about what a horrid little monster of a man the Major is.
Because he's sold out.
Yeah, and then Maxwell's like, yes, a horrid little disgusting man. And you helped him, why? And when the bishop can't come up with a good answer, he's like, all right, well, I think our mission is done here. Amen. Heinkel, do it.
Well, it's great because it's not even like, I think our mission is done here. He just kind of goes like, by the way, we didn't need a confession.
Yeah, they'd already resigned. They already resigned themselves, so they're going to kill this bishop.
They keep talking about how fat the Major is. He doesn't look that
I
overweight.
know. Thank you for picking up on this, Jacob, because I was arguing this very thing earlier. I'm like, everyone says how fat he was, and I'm looking at him, and perhaps this is just my American bias, but I'm
the
just like,
anime
he's not
does
a fat.
make him
Anime
chubby.
chubs. Yeah, the anime chubs him up.
In this, he really isn't. Like, the first full shot we get of the Major, I was actually shocked at how thin he looked.
Here's the thing. He is kind of fat for a German soldier in World War II.
Yeah.
But was he actually a soldier? I mean, he was a first lieutenant, but did he actually see action?
First lieutenants are soldiers.
He was an SS officer, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is the case where it's like he does not have the expected build of a soldier. They do such a good job of making him look cool. And like they never make any bones about the fact that you're supposed to loathe this guy. And it's easy to, because he is loathsome, but it's again the case. It's so cool though, like the way the shot composition of the first full shot we see where the bishop is describing meeting the Major in person, and like the dead eyes and stuff, and like just the look that he has on his face is,
he's like genuinely scared of the Major. Even just the memory of him 50 years later is terrifying.
And like the art really conveys that.
But it's at this point where we finally start to get more action with Herr Major. You know, he was also among the people watching the incident in Brazil, and he's delighted by it. Herr Doctor is less so. He's nervous that, oh no, our latest vampire got destroyed. But Major's completely fine with it. Major, Doctor, and the captain, the silent broody type man. Can I just say, I love the disparity of the costumes. Hair Major looks like your average evil officer type.
He looks like he walked out of a history book in a Waffen SS officer's uniform.
Yeah. Herr Doctor has got the most insane midriff going.
Yep.
And the glasses! What is up with his glasses?
He's got 8 framed glasses. He's like a spider.
Yeah, hold on. Let's not get started on how every character in this entire manga has glasses.
That was even in one of the author's notes. Huh. I just noticed all the characters have glasses. How about that?
It's because he doesn't like drawing eyes.
Yes. And it's so much easier to do dramatic reflections off of lenses. But and then the captain is just head to toe in his oversized coat and hat. You can barely see his eyes. Mr. Broody Boy. Our 3 Millennium officers go to return to the base with their success. We're calling it a success.
The Major thinks it's a success.
Yes.
The Nazi leadership who are living in absentia in Brazil do not think this is a success at all.
But to be fair, the Major does have one advantage his opponents sorely lack.
Zeppelins.
Yep.
They actually ride on a giant Zeppelin. Just to really drive home how hammy the Millennium is.
I mean, they are Nazis. They're about as cartoonish. Like, they are a cartoon villain because that's what the Nazis were in real life.
Poor Alucard, Pip, and Seras. They are stranded in Brazil. How are they ever going to get back? They don't have a plane or a boat, and they need to get back right away. The Queen called them. Anderson, why are you here?
Magnetism, man. They're bound to be together.
I know wherever you are, Alucard.
Oh, there's a Dojin. You know there is.
I don't know what's funny. The fact that the Catholic Church strong-armed you into helping us, or the fact that you clearly haven't seen what I've done to the statue of Big J.
Anderson and Alucard get into a quick brawl with each other.
They have a quickie. It's okay.
They have a quickie, yeah. And Anderson's like, God's decided to show mercy on you bloody heathens. And is like, there's a small airport to the few miles away from here. Disguised as a crop duster, you can get a private jet from the Vatican to take you back to your heathen island. F off the lot of you. Which isn't far off from the actual text of the manga.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It does rather handily fix the situation that they find themselves in, as they have to get back to England to have their meeting with the Queen. And indeed, they show back up where the Council of 12, Integra, and Maxwell, for reasons, are all gathered to meet with Queen Liz.
As Alucard is returning to England, this is also intercut with the Major returning to the normal, not vampire Nazis. The 2 salient points here are, one, we get introduced to the werewolves explicitly existing because the captain, the big boy, and a character that we've been so looking forward to discussing are both explicitly referred to as werewolves. And the other point relative to that is
hold on. They're explicitly referred to as werewolves.
Werewolves? Yeah.
This is another case where you have characters who are completely out of their depth and don't realize it, where the regular Nazi guys are like, people have started calling you acting Führer, and we're going to put you in your place, and one guy starts beating him with a cane, at which point the vampire part of the Nazi army pops out, shoots the cane out of the guy's hand, and the Major gets up, blood on his face, and says, let me explain to you how things actually work around here. It goes into the idea, and it's something that we had been told, but now we can see the Major is one of the few people, Alucard is not in over his head. If anything, he's overqualified for literally everything. The only other character I would argue is possibly in that category is the Major.
Yeah, and so the Major completes his bloody coup of the Nazi remnant forces while Alucard, Seras, and Pip show up at the council meeting. I love Pip's outfit. Yep. He is in jeans and a graphic tee in order to meet the Queen.
Well, hey, that's just it. He's a Frenchman through and through. He's not doing anything for the monarchy.
Especially the English monarchy. You're right.
Oh, meeting the queen? Well, you're lucky
Yeah.
I wore pants for this.
Speaking of whether or not characters wear pants, we see Alucard meet the queen, which is we learn interesting things.
Yeah. Alucard just walks up to the queen and they just start going, hey, remember all that hot, steamy sex we had? Yeah. For like a solid 3 pages.
That's great because the queen is only depicted as like a silhouette, kind of.
Yeah. She's always in shadow.
The shame.
And Alucard's got a great line if she's just like, oh, I was just but a princess right now. And Alucard's just like, nah, baby. You're so old now. That really turns me on.
Age has only enhanced your beauty, my queen. Oh, God, it's very uncomfortable.
Especially because this is a meeting of like 13 people that Alucard just walks into the middle of and starts hitting on the queen.
Oh, yeah, no, these are all super important folks, and Alucard is taking the time out of their days in order to do this, because who's gonna stop him? Michael doesn't exist?
Well, here's the thing. You know who is going to stop Alucard from hitting on the queen?
Schrodinger.
Our boy Schrodinger.
Oh, Schrodinger. Oh, God, Schrodinger.
Schrodinger sure does exist, or does he?
We're not even clear about that. He teleports, I think, it's weird because his power works in that if
his power is quantum states. He is
literally Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, he's literally Schrodinger's cat.
and it's just weird because he works like on the level of the manga in that he disappears and he moves between panels like however he wants. He doesn't have to go by location.
Mm-hmm.
It's just weird to describe that in a manga because it's just like, what is everyone else seeing?
It is one of those moments that works way better in the anime. It is spooky how he just appears inside the room with the TV that has Zoom installed in order to have a video conference between the Major and all of our heroes.
99 Video 2.
After a bit of flailing about, there begins the video call between the Major and realistically Alucard. The Major just hurls insults at everybody who isn't Alucard, and then they posture at each other for a while.
Yep.
I think he shows very, very mild respect to. Well, Integra, you're technically holding his leash, so I'm going to care enough to acknowledge your presence, but that's all you get.
And then we get his infamous war speech.
It's not even the full one. It's not even the full war speech we get during the attack on London. But it is him being like, gold? We have no gold.
I spent it all to make vampires.
That's actually something kind of interesting where I personally find the Major's philosophy interesting enough to, talking about how, like, don't think about it.
I think it's a broad stretch to call it a philosophy. It's more a fetish.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, though. There is philosophy to it because the perspective that the Major is taking, what he's saying is, if you have a goal, once you reach it, you stop. And that's stupid. You should keep going. And that's what Alucard respects him for. It's not so much that, because it's like he's fetishizing war. He's enjoying war for its own sake. And that's, he's a Nazi. He's evil. You're supposed to dislike him.
Yeah, I came to the understanding that he doesn't have a goal. He doesn't really have an end goal, an end point.
If you have a goal, then there's an ending, which kind of makes me think of Hiroaka in the sense of you shoot for number 1 because even if, number 4 is enough. And like that, funnily enough, this is also something that came up a lot in One Punch Man. It's like, if you don't keep going past, good enough, then you just stop. And then it's over.
You leave opportunity for it's over, and you leave opportunity for others to catch up or surpass you. You have to. It's a continual, gradual progression.
Yeah.
And the fetishizing of war and violence and suffering. The Major is easily, by a landslide, the most evil character in Hellsing. But the reason why Alucard wholeheartedly genuinely respects him is because that philosophy, that ideology, the determination inherent in it is in its own way respectable.
Yeah, it boils down to he wants you to do what you like and what you love to the fullest extent possible.
You could never like or sympathize with the Major, but like he is determined enough to go through with something like that. If only if it was, for something good.
For something positive, yeah. The Major finishes his war declaration. Alucard finds it to be superb and can't wait to get the party started. And Integra's like, yeah, no, you're crazy. You're just a bunch of terrorists. We're going to annihilate you. Alucard, Seras, end this fiasco. And we get one of the more famous panels as,
Yes.
as Alucard fires his weapon into Schrodinger's mouth hard.
Well, no, he places his gun into Schrodinger's mouth in a really awkward panel.
Yeah.
Yes, Matt, that's why I was using euphemism.
No.
No, I mean, he didn't just happen to point in that direction. There was some coordination going on there.
Okay, yes, specifically. Schrodinger fillets Alucard's gun and then he pulls the trigger.
Yes.
Yes.
And is splattered all over the ground, which surprises everyone. And then they look and the ground doesn't have any blood on it.
Or any Schrodinger either.
Or did it?
All of y'all are dirty.
It's because they hadn't. Okay, Pot. My name's Kettle. But because the Major was still talking on the TV, they all looked away from Schrodinger's corpse, and that allowed the quantum to happen.
The quantum state to collapse.
Yeah, but Seras then destroys the TV, and essentially that's where we ended our reading, with the Nazis declaring war and everybody getting ready to throw down like a good.
And the Queen saying to Integra and Alucard, I want you to find them and I want you to kill them. And I don't remember, the abridged series makes the I want you to record it so I can fall asleep to it every night. Mm-hmm. I don't think that was explicitly stated by the Queen in the manga, but she definitely implies it.
She got close.
Yeah.
She wants to enjoy this.
Mm-hmm. Because everybody in the entirety of the Hellsing universe is a violent psychopath who gets off to murder.
Hey, it's killing Nazis. Everyone can get behind that train.
Who gives a
Nazis?
So that brings us to the end of our reading. Let's move on to our discussion questions real quick before we wrap up here. Favorite characters. I stated earlier, I adore Anderson. He is the craziest SOB in this entire manga by a long shot. And that's with people like Alucard and the Major running around. Somehow he manages to be even nuttier and even cooler.
In the War Museum, like, it's literally he walks up and is like quoting scripture as he's pulling his knives out.
Mm-hmm. And he just creates the most interesting scenes whenever he and Alucard are on the same panel. So I adore Anderson. He's my favorite. How about you, Jake? Who's your favorite?
Alucard's definitely my favorite. The one who stood out to me the most was Integra. I gotta say, the Major is one of my favorite villains. Like, not favorite character in the same way that, like, I like Alucard. You're not supposed to like the Major and you don't, but man, he's fascinating to watch. It's like a train wreck. You just can't pull your eyes away. And it is the case where there are occasions where I kind of wish abridged Alucard was in the manga proper, because there are some places where, like one of the scenes where I felt like I was missing abridged Alucard was when Maxwell in the museum goes too far and insults Integra too much. Alucard's just like, well, you insulted my master, time for you to die. And it's kind of dry, whereas the takedown from the abridged series is hilarious.
If you're getting in a dick measuring contest with a woman, you must have started with the world's cruelest handicap.
The fact of the matter is, abridged Alucard and the Alucard from this are the same character, and oh man, Alucard is just such an enjoyable character to watch. He's so much fun.
It was at the museum scene where I realized that at way more points than I realized, Hellsing Ultimate Abridged had just straight lifted Anderson's prayers from the manga. It is equal parts directly lifted from the source material and Boondock Saints.
Oh, I gotta go with Pip. He doesn't do a lot, but what he does is always amazing. And just
he doesn't do a lot, but he's the only one who does anything.
And every time Pip is on screen, he steals the show. Like when they did the three of them walking into the Queen, you look at Pip because Pip doesn't care that he's here. And Pip is the leader of a band of mercenaries. And the only mission we've seen him on, he did not need them. He took out so much on his own. And just
He basically did it all himself.
And Pip, through Pip, we get great interactions with Seras, where she at least fights back when he makes fun of her, whereas opposed to like the relationship she has with Alucard, she really can't.
She can't, yeah.
That's not even just like a forced thing. That's not like a biological thing. Whereas we get to see her fight back against Pip, and we get some good interactions with there. And then also, runner-up was Walter, just because those like strings are really cool, and we get some like really good.
Cool.
It's JoJo posing that kills people around you in explosions.
Uh-huh. Explosions of blood and body parts. And Jay, who's your favorite character?
Well, if it's not obvious, I simp for Alucard 100% of the way. Close second would be Father Alexander.
I thought you were going to throw us a curveball and say Maxwell there. I'm like, oh, okay.
No. He's just everything.
Yes.
He's just everything. I also, not that, I ship them, but I totally ship them.
Honestly, fair. I think they ship each other.
I think we didn't talk about this, but I think one of my favorite parts about Alexander is he's super violent and like bloody and like willing to get things done. And then the second his job is over, he smiles and going like, it'd be great to get the wee children out here. Such a beautiful country.
Yeah.
They'd love to see all the art. He really cares about those kids, and he wants them to grow up in a world without monsters and or Protestants.
Yeah, I mean that's all you could ask for, right?
We tend to have similar favorite characters. Like everybody was all about Vegeta in Super. But like this and Yu-Gi-Oh! I think are the only two cases where we have like really diverse favorite characters. Which honestly, I think is a sign of a strong ensemble cast.
Which is really interesting because Hellsing relatively has very few characters.
Mm-hmm. There's the same central group and they go different places together, but I mean the same nonsense happens just in different areas.
It's like a lot of the times the new characters are people to get dismembered.
Yeah.
All right. So we have our favorite characters. How about favorite fight? Again, I gave away my hand pretty early in the episode. The fight between Anderson and Alucard in Ireland, because it just establishes the tone for the rest of the manga even better than chapter 1. Like chapter 1 just shows you how much of an immense badass Alucard is, exactly the level of violence and depravity you can expect from everybody. But that is the part that just makes the slamming of action figures together aspect of this manga go from hinted at to exactly what this is. There are no doubts about it. There's no escaping it. That's why we're here. And it's the panel where Alucard is like stapled to the wall by a gazillion bayonets, and Anderson is bent over at a 90-degree angle backwards, cackling at the sky.
Yep.
That energy.
It is glorious in how stupid and violent it is.
Yes.
It makes the edgy 13-year-old deep in my heart very happy.
See, now I'm just gonna have to come for you, Sam. Yeah, that's one of my favorite fights too. It just is top tier.
It is.
I think I would have to go for my favorite fight. I would stick with the fight with Luke, only because that's a very different Alucard who proceeds to just hammer away at a defenseless opponent, going like, "Hey, Hey, are you going to do something? Please do something. For the love of God, do something.
Well, I mean, he talked a big game.
He came in here talking a big game. And
Card being the proper sportsman is like, if you're going to talk, deliver. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for you to do anything you haven't like previously sold me. Like,
look, I'm just saying, if you're going to spend all this time fluffing me up, you might as well finish.
yeah.
He almost says that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just like dirty talking when someone's sucking my dick.
Perhaps I should get to the point.
And Jacob, your favorite fight, so we can wrap this nonsense up.
See, mine is probably going to be a weird one, because I'm not going to lie, me and my love for Dragon Ball, I really like, dynamic choreography, which Hellsing doesn't have a lot of. It's mostly people just slamming into each other, extreme violence, limbs go flying. Walter is definitely pretty top tier because those freaking drop wires are so cool. But honestly, I think my favorite fight is actually, and I have a reason for this, Alucard slaughtering the police in the Hotel Rio.
Yeah, fight the power, Jacob. I can get behind that.
That's a hot take in 2020.
Specifically the reason. Anyway, specifically the reason I liked that so much is Hellsing is definitely in its comfort zone and really like showing its stuff when it has like these really moody, aggressively shaded, shining eyes in the darkness shots. And honestly, that whole sequence was just a succession of that, interspersed with Alucard being pissed off at one of the guys for taking his own life, and Seras for being a whiny baby about it. It's other than that, it's just this cool image after cool image after cool image of just this unstoppable badass walking through a literal army.
Well, yeah, no, at that point, Alucard is a monster hunting down all these, he is the antagonist of a horror movie in that scene.
Oh yeah.
And it's deeply uncomfortable.
And the thing is, I like the imagery from that, but like one of the more, like literary meta things that's also, he makes a point of saying, when he calls Integra, he says, "You are aware, I am aware, the police officers that I've been slaughtering, I'm going to defend myself. You can't stop me. But they're just innocent people being sent to their deaths by evil assholes. I don't care, though. I'm going to enjoy doing this. So do my orders to kill them all still stand?" Like, that's one of the more meta parts of it. But I'm not going to lie. It's the thing that makes me like that air quotes fight is entirely the art. Because that is the part where like the art is just like, it goes to the next level.
All right. I did have another discussion question in here about the whiplash of tone between the ultraviolence and the silliness, but I think we've basically established at this point that we find it to be funny and therefore good.
I mean, the ultraviolence is inherently silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to.
Already been answered.
Yeah. And would you continue reading? I think that's a resounding yes from all of us.
Yes. Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Maybe for Halloween.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of the OverMangaCast. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Remember to subscribe to the show, leave us a review, and follow us on Twitter at OverMangaCast to see what we're reading and to see our shitposts about it.
And see which panels made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, we had a lot of them for this.
Spoilers, it was most of them.
Yeah. One thing that I forgot to note earlier was Hirano really loves his vertical glamour shots of characters.
Yeah, those don't make great Twitter posts.
They don't, but they are cool.
Yep.
And next week we are going to be reading something I have zero. I'm going in 100% blind on this. Shimatsu no Valkyrie, chapters 1-14.
Also known as Record of Ragnarok, because at the time we're going to be reading this has not been localized.
Ah, wonderful.
Yeah, that also had no idea that even existed until we started doing this, so that's going to be fun.
I think I think this is the first time in our little show history that I'm going into something completely blind. I'm looking forward to it.
We are all going into this completely blind because I just know this exists. That is the
Hell
only
yeah.
thing I have over you guys. So,
I've just got a lot of good recommendations.
yep. So if you all are reading along with us, feel free to mention us on Twitter. See how you're liking it so far.
All right. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Good night.
Good night.